What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It is time to give you my updated college football playoff predictions as we head into Week 13 of the 2024 college football season. We got the playoff rankings coming out tonight. We got the third playoff rankings coming out at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, so definitely a little bit earlier than last week. Of course, we had the basketball games going on, but tonight they're coming out like it normally did in the first playoff ranking. So coming out at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, who you think is going to be in the top 25 for the playoff rankings? Let me know down in the comments below. But I'm going to give you my updated bracket predictions for the 12-team playoff. I'm going to give you my 12 teams here in this bracket. And again, this is based off of week by week in the regular season of what I think the bracket would look like, based off of what happened, of course, this past weekend. And, after that weekend is complete, I think this is what the playoff bracket would look like. So I'm going to give you my updated playoff predictions. And I have made quite a few changes here, compared to last week. We did make a change for one conference champion. And then we, of course, made some changes to the at-large team as well. So let's go ahead and get right into my predictions. Here is the bracket for the 12-team playoff. And I have made a change here to my top four Power 4 conference champions. I still got the Group of 5 champion, pretty much the same thing. You look at Oregon, they're still my number one seed. This is clearly the best team in the country. They didn't really play that great against Wisconsin last weekend. Didn't really look like the number one team in the country, but in my opinion, they're still that number one seed. I think based off of that, they would still be that number one seed going into this weekend if these games were to happen this week. But yeah, the Ducks, I think, will be number one tonight in those playoff rankings. And then you got Texas here at number 2. I think Texas, as of right now, I probably would favor them against Texas A&M in a couple more weeks. If they win that game, they're definitely going to get in there as the SEC champion. And again, this is just based off of the regular season. It's not really what I think is going to happen here the rest of the way forward. And this is not really based off of what I think is going to happen here at the end of the postseason. I'm definitely going to be changing my picks here based off of those conference championships, and picks and everything. I will be making conference championship prediction videos and pretty much, giving you who I think is going to be that top 4 conference champion. So, yeah, Texas here at number 2. Again, as of right now, I do favor Texas against Texas A&M, but that game probably will be close. That game right there is going to come down to who probably will get to the SEC championship. That SEC race, though, is really wide open, just like the ACC and the Big 12 races. The Big 10 has been pretty quiet this year, but you look at Clemson here at number 3. They were my number 3 seed last week. They do, finish up conference play from this past weekend against Pittsburgh. They ended up winning that game, so they go 7-1 in the conference. I know you got Miami that is not done with conference play yet. Miami, maybe they lose a game, probably against Syracuse is probably my best guess where they can lose that game. And they'll probably miss out on the ACC championship and probably the college football playoff. So with Miami, if they lose a game, I think Clemson probably gets in here and they probably win the ACC championship against SMU, or it could be still against Miami, because let's say SMU loses maybe their final 2 games. It could be Miami versus Clemson in the ACC championship. So yeah, the ACC is definitely going to be a wild finish here, going into the last couple weeks here this college football season. But I do favor Clemson right now in the ACC, and then Colorado is my number 4 seed. I had BYU here last week, but after BYU losing, I think Colorado might be the best team in the Big 12. Again, you still got BYU in there in that conversation. You got Arizona State now. Arizona State could probably jump in here. Arizona State's been a very big surprise team. They're like 8-2. They just defeated Kansas State. That Big 12 has just been so wide open ever since the beginning of the season. Maybe it was quiet in the first few weeks, but ever since Oklahoma State and Utah went downhill and stuff, it's just been a conference that's been, teams beating up on each other. But again, I think Colorado might be the best team in the Big 12, and they're coming off a huge win against Utah, 49-24, so that's really enough for me to put Colorado in here as a number 4 seed and as a top 4 Power 4 conference champion. And then Boise State at number 12, they're still my Group of 5 champion. This has been my preseason pick, all season long. Boise State continues to be that top Mountain West Conference team. You still got other Group of 5 teams that are still battling here for this number 12 spot. You got, also UNLV probably still alive. Maybe Army, because Army Army is not getting a lot of respect right now, but Army just doesn't have a great resume compared to Boise State. You look at Boise State's resume, they have a loss to Oregon, the number 1 ranked team in the country. So I think that really is definitely a deserving here of a college football playoff spot if you're Boise State and if you're also the committee. We'll see where Boise State's ranked tonight and see where these top 4 conference champions will be as well. But let's now get into the at-large teams. Number 5 stays the same for me, and that's going to be Ohio State. So I got the Buckeyes here at number 5. I think Ohio State, based off of, what happened this past weekend, I think they would probably get in there as an at-large team, but I think this team is going to meet Oregon in the Big Ten Championship, but they got a big test coming up against Indiana. If Indiana competes against Ohio State, I think Indiana might get into the playoff. But Ohio State, if they blow them out, then Indiana's definitely not going to get into the college football playoff because Indiana just doesn't really have enough on the resume. But yeah, the Buckeyes here at number 5, we'll see if they can take care of business against Indiana. And if they win that game, they're definitely in the Big Ten Championship. There's no question about it. Moving on to number 6, they're back in the playoff conversation and back in the playoff bracket, and that is the Georgia Bulldogs. So Georgia actually is my preseason pick to win the national championship. I didn't really feel confident with Georgia last week. I did say they were probably going to beat Tennessee, to be honest, and they did that. They won by a couple of touchdowns. So, yeah, Georgia definitely with a much-needed win to keep their playoff hopes alive, but this team actually can still make the SEC championship, and that's the reason why I got them as that second at-large team, because they probably would lose to Texas in the SEC championship. Not saying that's going to happen. I think Georgia and Texas, if they met in the SEC title game, I would definitely still pick Georgia, to be honest, because Georgia definitely is a dangerous team when it comes to these postseason games. So, yeah, Georgia here at number 6. Moving on to number 7, that's going to be Penn State. I think Penn State wins out. They go 11-1, and they get in there as an at-large team, so not much to talk about the Nittany Lions. Number 8 is Alabama. So Alabama gets in here as an at-large team. I think Alabama is going to win out. They go 10-2. Maybe doesn't make the SEC championship, but they'll still get in there as a 10-2 team. You got the loss to Tennessee, and you're not going to see Tennessee here in these playoff bracket. There wasn't really much room to put them on here because, Tennessee, you probably don't think they're going to get in there as an at-large team. They still can, but the question is, you got all these other SEC teams with like 2 losses in the conference. You got Ole Miss, which you're going to see here in a minute. And then Alabama here at number 8. I think Alabama would probably get in here over Tennessee, even though they they got beat by them head-to-head. I mean, they probably would put Tennessee here at number 8, but it's definitely going to be a tough call here for the committee for these SEC teams. But I got Alabama here at number 8 as a at-large team. They go 10-2 here the rest of the way, and they get in here at the number 8 seed. Moving on to number 9, that is going to be Notre Dame. Notre Dame doesn't really have a great resume, but they'll still get in here as an at-large team. They'll have Army coming up this weekend. If they take care of business in that game, then yeah, that's going to be a really good win for the Fighting Irish. I really am surprised that the committee is not penalizing them a little bit far back because they lost to a bad Northern Illinois team, but Notre Dame's been on a winning streak ever since that loss, so I think I do trust, Notre Dame to be here at that number 9 spot and then also still be as an at-large team. I think Notre Dame's going to win out. They go 11-1. They beat Army and USC to win out and go 11-1 and get in here as an at-large team. Number 10 is Ole Miss. So Ole Miss here as also a 10-2 team. I think they went out. I think they beat Florida on Saturday. I'm just going to go ahead and give my prediction. I think Ole Miss beats Florida on Saturday. I know that could be a tough game. Florida's got DJ Lagway back. And if Ole Miss slips up here, I think you can put Tennessee back here in the playoff. Let's say Ole Miss loses to Florida this weekend, and, Tennessee's already beaten Florida. Tennessee will probably get this last at-large bid, to be honest. I think Ole Miss, is a slightly better team than Tennessee just based off of what's happened this year, but again, if Ole Miss does slip up in that game this weekend, Tennessee likely gets in here as the at-large team. And then what if, Tennessee probably slips up? They're definitely not going to make the college football playoff because they got Vanderbilt, as their last SEC game. And that could be a very tricky game. So, yeah, keep an eye on this game here for Ole Miss coming up this weekend against Florida. Moving on to number 11, my last at-large team spot, and that's going to be Indiana. So, Indiana was here at number 11 for me last week. You look at Indiana, not much on the resume, but they'll have Ohio State this weekend. We'll see what they look like here against the Buckeyes. Again, if the committee does see them compete in that game, let's say they lose just by 10, maybe 7 points in that game. But if they lose by like maybe 14 or maybe like over 20 points, then yeah, the committee is not going to put Indiana in there as an at-large team because not much is on the resume for Indiana. Not any like great wins and maybe like quality wins, but not really like great wins against like great teams in the Big Ten. But yeah, if they at least compete with Ohio State, they'll definitely be in there at 11-1 as an at-large team. It may not be like in the from the 5 through 9 range, but it might just be here at maybe 10 or 11. So I got Indiana here at number 11. Let's now make predictions here if these games were to happen this weekend. We'll start with the first round games, and like I said, first round games are held on campuses. We'll start with Alabama and Notre Dame. I think Alabama wins that game. I think home field advantage might be the difference in that one. Two very talented teams, but playing at Bryant-Denny Stadium, I think Alabama does win here against Notre Dame. And then Ohio State, they beat Boise State pretty easily because that's a home game. And like I said, I think the Buckeyes defense would definitely really shut down Ashton Genty's running game. And then you got Ole Miss and Penn State. This would be a pretty good matchup. I'm actually going to go with Ole Miss. I think their offense is slightly better than Penn State's, and their defense looks like it's going to get a lot better if they go into the postseason and everything. And then Georgia and Indiana. I don't think Indiana is clearly on Georgia's level. I think Georgia will definitely take care of business, and plus that game is in Athens, and I don't really see Indiana going in there and just pulling off a huge upset. I think Georgia wins that one fairly easily. Second round games in the quarterfinals. I think Oregon beats Alabama. Like I said, I do trust Jalen Milroe a little bit more than, Dylan Gabriel, I should say. I do trust Dylan Gabriel a little bit more than Jalen Milroe. And then Ohio State and Colorado. Boy, this would be a pretty good matchup here, but I got to go with the Buckeyes. They're too dangerous. I don't think Colorado would definitely keep up with Ohio State's offense and definitely their wide receivers. And then Texas, I think they beat Ole Miss there in a high-scoring game. Georgia and Clemson, potentially a second, matchup here, a rematch from week number 1. I still think Georgia is clearly a better team. I think Clemson probably makes it a little bit closer than the first game, but got to go with Georgia here in this one. And I've already given away my national championship pick, but I got Georgia and Texas, in the semifinals for the potential third time from the regular season SEC championship, and now the semifinals here in the playoff. And then same thing with Oregon and Ohio State. The regular season Big Ten championship, and then here in the semifinals in the playoff. I got to go with Ohio State. I think Ohio State beats Oregon for the third time. And then Georgia and Texas, I think Georgia sweeps Texas in the series like 3-0 from the regular season to the SEC championship. And they also beat them here in the semifinals in the playoff. And then Ohio State and Georgia. I'm going back to my preseason pick here for the national championship prediction, and then also picking my national championship pick. I think that's Georgia. Now, with Georgia beating Tennessee, I kind of do feel confident again with Georgia going the rest of the way forward. Again, this could be a very dangerous team. If Carson Beck can get his throwing back on track, and if he can take care of the football, then yeah, Georgia could be a very dangerous team going into the college football playoff. But yeah, those are my updated playoff predictions here for week number 13. Let me guys know what you think about my playoff predictions. Give me your playoff predictions for the bracket down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.